School committee meeting open at 6:02. We have a roll call. Please.
Catherine Patino. Here. David Florio.
Here.
Luke Murray.
Here.
Donna Colunian.
Yeah.
James Pearson.
Here.
Greg Levis.
Here.
John Cole.
Here.
To go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session, Madam Chair.
I second the motion.
And could we, I guess we can have roll call vote.
Catherine Patino.
Yes.
David Florio.
Yes.
Luke Murray.
Yes.
Donna Colunian.
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
All right, we will see the public again. Oh, yeah. No, nobody here. Oh, everybody's coming in. Oh. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the late start. Apologize. So I'd like to reconvene the open session. I think it's 7:00 something or whatever. 7:07. And could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. You may be seated. And Mr. Levis, if you could notify the public of the emergency exits, please.
Sure. In case of emergency, there are exits to your rear. You can exit the building to the left or to the right.
Thank you. And Mr. Murray, if you could honor us by reading the mission statement of Coventry Public Schools, please.
Good. The mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you. And just to notify the public, the school committee met in executive session for about an hour before this meeting, this reconvening of the open session. There were 3 things discussed. Homeschool requests. There was a vote, unanimous 5-0. We approved the executive session minutes of 11, I believe it was 11/18.
Yes.
11/18. That vote was also unanimous, 5-0. And we also discussed school security. That being said, is there a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Madam Chair, I make motion that the minutes of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the approval of our open meeting minutes from 11/18. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make motion to approve the minutes of the 11/18/2021 minutes as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain. I was not present.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 4 with 1 abstention. Okay, we're going to move into the public agenda for those people present. That means the remainder of the agenda items on the agenda are open for public comment and discussion before, if there's a vote involved in the committee, I will call for a motion for the vote. But before we actually call for the vote, it'll go out to the public and you can have questions or comments about that particular agenda item. All right. We're tabling number 6 and number 7. And we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, which is the presentation of round 2 lighting, LED and lighting and fixture upgrades. And Mr.
Sure. We have Mr. Jerry Drummond from National Grid. Mr. Drummond do you still reside in Coventry?
I just moved to West Greenwich.
Just moved to West Greenwich. Sorry to hear that, but if you don't mind coming up to the microphone, just a quick overview. Mr. Drummond has worked with our previous director of facilities and transportation, Mr. Martin. He's been before us before, helping us with our lighting fixtures and upgrading to LED lights for some cost-saving measures. We did what we called phase 1, which was Washington Oak, where we did the fixtures and the LED lights. And then the middle school, because of the potential with our bond, and we did just the LED lights. So tonight, I know Mr. Drummond has had conversations with Mr. Martin. He met with myself and Mr. Sands. I also have included in the packet not only the financial analysis, which is up on the screen, but also emails going back and forth originally. Part of this was I had to make sure because of our virtual net metering that it wouldn't impact that. And you see an email I received from Mr. Dan Joyce from Balance Rock, who not only did our virtual net metering, but helped us go out to bid for natural gas and for gas in electric, where we have significant savings on that. But he said that this project doesn't impact that. I believe, Mr. Murray, you also might have had some conversation with Mr. Martin and Mr. Conti, also with Mr. Martin and Mr. Drummond. So tonight, we're just putting forward that we'd like to move forward with phase 2, to upgrade the rest of our schools with the LED lights and fixtures. It'll be done by a contractor. There's the analysis that you have. It's on the screen again. And we think it's a win-win. We've been talking about, we know that budgets have been tight, and we've been demonstrating, I think, in our school committee meetings, the efforts that we're taking in terms of trying to reduce expenditures and cut costs. And here's another opportunity for us. So I don't know, Mr. Drummond, if you have anything you want.
Get recognized.
Okay. Dave has his hand up.
Hi, Mr. Drummond. I'm on the Coventry Fire District.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Does this have anything to do with what we're doing at Prism with the Coventry Fire
That's
District?
for the LED streetlights. So my role within National Grid is to support the state, the municipalities, and the public schools. So I'm working at Warwick and Luke on the streetlights there. We're doing your streetlights as well. So my job is
Very
to
good.
take ratepayer money and invest that back into you, which we're going to talk a little bit about.
Okay. Thank you.
Same sort of concept. So again, I've worked with all the public schools. What you see here is, I know that none of the schools, I'm a Rhode Islander my whole life, all 64 years. I know that there's no money in the budget, but what we do have is annual energy saving opportunities. And that's really what we're trying to do here. My mantra with the state energy office and with all the districts is that no money up front, and the annual energy savings will pay for all of your costs.
Right.
Now, you do pay in on your electric bill, both residential and your schools, into a ratepayer fund, which are known as rebates and incentives, right? You might have had RISE do an energy audit at your home. Same thing here. So you can see in the analysis is an upfront cost by the contractor. National Grid is putting back in about 28% of your cost from those ratepayer funds that you pay into. So you're only paying 72% of that. Now, what I've done here is take your annual energy savings. So again, no upfront cost. We will pay the contractor after they are completely done. I do a post inspection on your behalf, and then I'll ask you to sign off on the project, say this has been completed to your satisfaction. The energy savings are beginning, and on a monthly basis, we'll put a portion of that net cost that's after the incentive on your bill, and the annual energy savings will meet or exceed that annual cost. And at the end of the term, the equipment is all yours. Useful life of LED lights is 13 years, should be 20 years plus. So we're certainly going to get our money back very quickly here. And again, there's no budget impact. Your electricity budget is going to remain the same. We're just going to you pay National Grid less money, and you'll pay from the savings for the lights. So I don't know if there's any questions about technologies. I coordinate with Rhode Island Department of Education. This is the type of thing that they do. So.
Thank you, Mr. Drummond. Mrs. Clooney, any questions?
No.
Good. Mr. Murray?
I'm going to have questions.
I know.
Sorry, Jerry.
No worries.
So Mr. Drummond and I have worked and will work on the LED program pretty extensively, and then on other projects, but I was involved and we did correspond regarding this. And this was something that was brought up in the context of the building effort because Mario from RIDE brought this up as a concern, right? So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this to the attention of the committee members, but I'll wrap it around because I want you to be aware of this. So we had a conversation because Mario Carino from RIDE had approached Jason and myself, because I happen to be the building committee chairperson, about the fact that they didn't see the recovery, the ROI on our previous lighting effort. And there was definite concerns there. And Mario takes it from his perspective, not only as a RIDE official, but he's also a school committee member up in Lincoln. And they have found that the ROI is meeting up in those communities and many other communities throughout the state. Coventry is kind of an outlier where we're not seeing our recovery. I ran the numbers independently, and looked at it and came to the same conclusion. We're not meeting it, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, but we're not.
I will say you are correct in dollars.
In dollars. And I would say that even on an energy usage consumption basis, without all things being equal, and without additional unknown units being added, we're still not meeting that. And so I fired off an email at one point, and I meant to share it with the committee, but it basically gets very in depth on energy analysis. And we bantered back and forth. Jerry did meet with us subsequent to that. We agree to disagree in some categories. All right. So I put that out there to say to the committee that the numbers baked in here are certainly estimates, and we may not exactly, because I don't want to get burned in the future if I vote for this and say, this is our return on investment, this is what we're going to be held to. And if somebody comes to me in 4 years and says, you as a school committee member didn't do your due diligence because you're not meeting your ROI. However, that said, these are pretty, I don't know if they're conservative or liberal in their estimates, right? But they're essentially, a simple payback, let's say of 3 years at Hopkins Hill. Mm-hmm. Even if that turns into 6 years, you're still with LED lamps, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking at, I know on streetlights, we're at 10-year warranty, 20-year lifespan, right, based on the hourly. So even if you're there, and the fact that now we don't have maintenance personnel having to get up and change those lamps, we have better lighting in the schools. We have better technology as a whole. And by the way, if we do move forward with the building bond effort, that's one last thing we'll have to expend. I'm a big fan of on-bill pay because you are reaping the benefits by just paying your normal bill, and there's an offset, and you do get an incentive. So I wanted to lay that out there in that light of being honest. I don't agree fully with some of the paybacks, but even if they double from a rationale standpoint, I'm comfortable with the fact of moving forward with this because I think it's the right thing to do both for our school quality and from a financial standpoint, because there is still a return on investment, even if it's a little bit longer than we'd like or as proposed. I think ultimately it pays off. So with that, I'll leave it there for the committee, but I'm certainly in favor of this. I've vetted it fully, and I've been involved with this sort of efforts in the past, including other facilities in Warwick. So, and I went through the same assessment many times, so I'm comfortable. Thank you.
And I think one of the reasons we extended the payback term, the on-bill repayment term, Luke and I have shared spreadsheets. We did a bunch of analysis. You're saving units of energy. The problem is 5 years ago when we did this project in 2016 with the bond, you were paying 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Now you're paying 17.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So you save 20% of the units. So if you had $1 and you saved 20% of that, but then you multiply it times 1.25, so at the price increase, you're back up to $1. So this was a very big concern of mine. So I have an intern, Luke knows this, and I had him run for 3 different school districts. 2 had done this, and we saw very similar results, right? They saved 20%, but their price went up 25. I did a district that did nothing. Yeah. Their budget is 28% more than it was 5 years ago because they did nothing. So at best, we are doing, I'm going to call it cost avoidance as opposed to savings, all right? This is savings based on today's usage, today's cost. You've entered into a long-term agreement, I know, on your pricing. As prices went up over the last 5 years, I call those cost avoidance dollars. So I agree with what you said. We took that into consideration, and rather than just put it on your bill for 3 years, if it's a 3-year payback, we moved it out to 5 years. So it does spread out that risk on your behalf. It's 0% money. So even if we're somewhere in the middle between 3 and 6, you're still the goal is still to get annual savings. Is going to exceed your annual cost. And we haven't even talked a lot about maintenance cost here, right? I mean, as you said, you got to get electricians in here to change ballast and other lamps and those kinds of things. So it's minimal. We think we were $5,000 a year for the whole district. I'm sure you spent a lot more than that. Yeah. So, I don't know if there's any other questions.
I think Mr. Pearson is the last one.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I don't have any questions either. Thank you for the work. And I guess we're ready for a motion. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the lighting fixture upgrades from National Grid.
I second the motion.
Before I call for the vote, are there any people in the public that would like to ask any questions or have any concerns about this particular agenda item? Mr. Cowett.
The only thing I was going to add is when we repair light bulbs that need to get changed out, our electricians often have to replace ballasts.
Yeah.
And so we see very often with old light fixtures and old buildings that it's not just a bulb, it's a ballast as well. And so I think there's probably some cost avoidance with that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you
Jerry,
for your work.
Jerry, we're already planning to buy a new truck with the savings that we make from
There
it.
you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is the introduction of the executive assistant to the superintendent and secretary to the school committee. Mr. Levis.
I was going to table that, but no. Joe, little humor.
Little humor.
No, I just want to congratulate Mrs. Patty Martin. We actually, we posted the position. We had a lot of really good candidates, and I thought the interviews, Ms. Patno and I sat on interviews, and I thought they were, we had excellent candidates. I think, but Ms. Martin was clearly, been doing the position, been doing a phenomenal job, and we're very excited to be able to. I'm very excited, and I believe the committee is too, in terms of having you as our. You getting all this down? As the executive assistant to the superintendent and secretary to the school committee. So I just wanted to, again, I appreciate you stepping up and taking this on in the interim. And I'm very excited that you applied for it and that you are the person we've hired. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, any comments?
Oh. Mrs. Martin, it's going to be great. What do you mean on an interim basis?
She was our interim.
Oh, she's our interim?
She was for
She
Donna
was, but
McDonald.
no more. She's
No.
permanent now, right?
Oh,
Don, you're going to be unhappy
Why is that?
because she's not going to be your secretary anymore.
Secretary now.
she never was.
She never was.
Data manager.
Oh, data manager. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Mrs. Martin, for accepting the post. You're going to be an asset to the position and an asset to Mr. Levis for sure. I know that. So thank you, and thank you for being our secretary too. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian?
Congratulations, Patty. I know you've been doing a wonderful job, and I know you'll continue to do that.
Thanks, Mr. Murray.
Keep it simple. Congrats, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
And finally, Mr. Pearson.
Also simple. Congratulations and looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
And finally, from me, congratulations, obviously, as well. I don't think we could have gotten a better person. And Mr. Levis is correct. We interviewed a bunch of competent people, but nobody had your qualities and experience. And so we're so happy you accepted and actually applied for this position. So congratulations. We're looking forward to working with you as we've been doing for the last several months. And before I move on, is there anybody in the public that would like to comment or say anything? Okay. Again, congratulations. Moving on to agenda item number 10, the introduction of the Deputy Director of Finance. So
Mr. DeVerna, do you mind coming up to the, to put you on the spotlight? So I want to introduce everybody to Mr. Chris DeVerna. You may know his wife, Dana DeVerna. Dana is head of the Substance Abuse Task Force. She's presented to the school committee on several occasions. She works through CCAP. I met Chris several years ago in a different role that he occupies as head of the Coventry Youth Soccer League. And he's done a phenomenal job in that role, expanding the league and the opportunities for youth in soccer. We had posted the position. And I want to thank the committee because we brought it as a controller, and I know you guys really saw the value in this and pushed, and we modified the job description. We had excellent candidates. But I have to say that I wasn't part of the first round, but Mr. Coward and I know we were part of the second round, and Mr. DeVerna just kind of really just blew us away in terms of just, just his poise and his knowledge. He's a certified public accountant. He's worked for Citizens, and you can share a little bit more about yourself, Chris, but he's worked for Citizens for many years. But just his philosophy, what we felt that he's going to bring to us in supporting Mr. Sands and the work. I mean, this has been a challenging year. We used to have 5 people in the department. We've had 3 since June. You started with us on Monday and hit the ground running, and it's already done yeoman's work. So we're very, very fortunate. We know how important finances are. They're the foundation of what we do. We're ecstatic to have you on board. And again, I want to introduce, but Chris, do you mind just telling a little bit more about yourself or anything you want to share with the committee?
Sure. Well, I'm from Rhode Island. And I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for a while, DeSanto Priest and Company, which is a regional accounting firm, most recently with Citizens Bank. And then this opportunity came up. I'm from Coventry and have 2 kids in the school system. As you said, I've been involved with some different organizations like Coventry Soccer Association. It's been rewarding to me, sort of giving back. So it seemed like a good opportunity to be involved more in the community for something that was, more of a cause, I guess, and also put, my professional expertise to use. So I'm very excited to get to know everybody and work with them more.
Great, thanks. Mr. Florio, any comments or questions?
As a former soccer coach, carry on. You're going to do a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Kalunian.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. We'll be looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Mr. Murray.
I know Harold's smiling ear to ear over there because he finally has some help. Welcome. I look forward to great things. I'm a big believer finance is the backbone of any organization. It all starts with the numbers to a great extent with schools. Some will argue that fact, but if you can't pay for it, ultimately it's a problem. So I hope, you'll be a supporting force, a stable force, and being part of the community. I welcome you to the team. I think you'll find it very rewarding to be part of the community, but also helping out on this end and really being behind the scenes of everything. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson.
Welcome aboard. That's all. I'll keep it short.
Thank you.
And finally, again, welcome aboard. And I think it's really wonderful that you're part of our community anyway, that you live here. I think folks who live in town who get involved have a vested interest. And so congratulations, and we look forward to working with you. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Anything from the public for Chris? Guess not. All right, thanks. So we can move on to agenda item number 11, which is the enterprise lease agreement for facilities and vehicles. Did you want to start?
Sure, I'll start this. And I know you've seen this on the agenda many times, and you've heard me ask for it to be tabled. We started this process well over a year ago, and at the time, I remember comments being made by previous council about neighbors were talking about the junk vehicles that were at Oak Haven, and we said, no, those are our vehicles. Fast forward, we're in a situation now, we used to have 7 vehicles that we could plow with. We have 4, and that doesn't mean 4 vehicles that are reliable, but we have 4 that we could start plowing with. Probably a couple of those would end up breaking down like they did last year. We're in dire straits. The reason it took so long was even though the town has approved this, Mr. Anderson had some issues with language and wanted to get some language changes that would protect us. And he's been working diligently with Mr. Sands and in the lease company. And just when we thought we have it, I bring it forward, and yet we couldn't get the change in the language, so I table it. And then I do the same thing the following week, or we didn't have vehicles, and I apologize. I sent an email to the committee today because the vehicles are so difficult. We could go out in the master price agreement and buy vehicles, but the bottom line is the prices that are there, the dealerships won't sell us vehicles for those prices. They can get 20, 25,000 more. So we're hoping to get 3 vehicles, but as of today, right now we have 2. And so that's why, and again, I apologize. I did submit an email though, that I think hopefully is reassuring to the council, because to the school committee, that Mr. Anderson not only working with the lease company in language, but also working with Mr. D'Agostino, and indicated that the council has approved this as a resolution. It was more on our end with the language that, we had been before. I think Ms. Padno and I, we went before the council, or maybe it wasn't you with me. It was me. I went before. I think you were there because we were talking about another agenda. But we didn't have the vehicles. And so Mr. D'Agostino and Mr. Anderson go back and forth, and Mr. D'Agostino puts in writing that, that the council approved the lease document. And then therefore we don't need to go back before them. We need to, and Mr. Anderson shared that with me. We need approval from the council. In fact, if the council approves, they're waiting for me to sign off so that we can get those vehicles. They will get them delivered to us before the end of December. And so, again, Mr. Martin has been working on this. Obviously he's not with us. He will be coming back at our meeting in January so we can recognize him. Mr. Sands has been working. He's here if you have questions. But we desperately need the vehicles, and I'm asking the committee to please approve this so we can get the vehicles delivered. And if we're hoping to get a 3rd vehicle, but I'm not going to bring forward. I couldn't bring anything forward to you for a 3rd vehicle because it doesn't exist right now. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Colonia?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
Is the reason we can't get the third vehicle mainly because we're going off the MF?
It doesn't exist. The lease company, they can't find it right now. We were hoping, I think in my email, I said that if I could, we were holding off, and if we had one, they would have created another document and given it to us today. But it's been that challenging. They had vehicles for us before, but we didn't have the language properly. And they, in fact, we had to commit that we were hopeful like that. We're very, I was very positive that the committee would support this, because if not, they can get rid of these vehicles. So,
I looked at the price. I'm pretty familiar with these vehicles, having owned a few myself, and these exact trucks.
Previously, it was $65,000. So this is a lower price, because I think a vehicle quote they had given us when we were going to come before was almost $65,000. So this is actually $9,000 less. I think it's $56,000 in here. So but again, if these vehicles will be gone, I just got an email from them as we're here asking me for DocuSign, and I said they can't do anything till the committee.
I get it. I support it. I just,
I'm just saying,
really, because, I know we need it. I'd love to have that third vehicle. The only thing that makes me sad is Jason's not here to actually see this, because I'm sure he'll, he worked very hard on this, and hopefully he can convey the message. But no, that's it. That's all I have.
I have to sign this.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson, anything?
No further questions. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions, except thanks for getting this all ready for us to actually make a motion. So is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion. Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the executive lease agreement for facility vehicles as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
And before I call for the vote, any questions from the public? Again, I want to thank everybody involved with this, including our attorney and the attorney for the town. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Agenda item number 12, the 3-year budget forecast, revenue and expenditures, and issues affecting the preparation of the school budget. So
I'll just start. If you do have in your packet, we did receive, I believe, Monday. I know the school committee had received an email from from the town manager in there. We had put this together prior to that. So we received from the town manager, the revenue projections. And just to highlight, we're going to put together a presentation for the 20th. We will share that which will be this document, but also a slide that'll highlight some of the areas of focus. But really, if you remember our conversation, we used funds from the ESSER 2 to fund positions that we needed. So, I mean, our area of focus is going to be, well, we have a lot of needs, and I'm sure there'll be other things we'll discuss in the budget process, but really personnel, to maintain the level of services for personnel. And then the other area that, even though we, and Mr. Murray was been very articulate about our maintenance requirement through the school building committee process, there's an assumption that, we're given money and we just have to make it work within that money. And we're saying we're not able to. And so you'll see here, we're highlighting in our 3-year projections, we have about $1 million in our budget to go towards the maintenance requirement. There's still a need for about 1.6 million. And that is something we've been saying all along through the school building process. And so this is our 3-year projections, and it may, we're talking about state aid right now, and we made a assumption of a 2% increase. State aid may be level fund. Some people are saying state aid may be cut. There are a couple of districts that may get an increase, but then there's also discussion about using funds that the state has to offset some of the needs that districts are experiencing because of COVID. So we have to stay tuned with that, but this is our assumption right now. So we will put together, like I said, we're going to work on next week putting together a couple of slide presentation. This is just an overview when we meet with the council, but we'll share that with you and ask for your feedback on that prior to presenting on the 20th. So Mr. Sands is here if you have to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, did you have anything for Mr. Sands or Mr. Levis?
Mr. Sands, have you heard anything about the $1.6 billion that the state is holding on to and how they're going to distribute that money to the education,
I haven't heard anything about that, but from what I understand, the ESSER funds are predominantly coming to us in that format. So the ARP funds that we will be receiving will be part of that. I'm not sure about the rest. The ESSER funds, the ARP funds actually came out last week or the week before. So that was that could be part of that process of the 1.8 billion.
It's 1.2 billion you're talking about, Dave. But that our funds are completely separate from that. So we've already had access to ESSER 2, and ARP just came out that we can start applying for. So
that money that you apply for and get, that'll go directly to the school department, not to the town, correct?
Correct.
Very good. Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Levis.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Kalunian, anything?
I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Mr. Murray?
No questions?
He's thinking.
I'm thinking whether I want to get into this now or just wait till later. But I think so. We're showing a 3% revenue projection steady. What foundational basis is that on? Just basically saying the calculation of our normal contractual obligations and benefits.
Are you talking about the local appropriations?
Yes, correct.
Increase?
Correct.
That's because the town has already stated that they're looking at our funds being raised by 3% in all of our discussions. That's been the premise, is that our budget's going up 3%. So we wanted to make sure that we matched exactly what they had put into their projections going forward.
Okay. I guess my only caution on that is, they're not driving this train. No offense to the council, but we manage our own budget, right? So them saying this is what you're going to get, and then you know how this conversation is going, right? Yeah. Because you're getting that much, we can't do a lot of other things.
Correct.
And it comes back around to us instead of really looking at what our contractual increases are, our actual benefits and our actual needs are. And I'm not saying it's not 3%. I'm not saying it's not 4%. I would like it to be, I guess from personally, I'd like to see it more reflective of an actual calculation as opposed to going the way.
This is though, I mean, we sat down, this is a projection, right? Like we haven't started, in full disclosure, I met with the town manager yesterday morning, and what he wants to do is what he shared with me is like pick a target and say the target's like 2.75. But then he wants us, as we build a budget, to justify so maybe we need three, hypothetically a department needs. So he wants every department to work at 2.75. But if your needs are greater, then we show where that gap is and why we need that, right? So, but when we look at all the different expenditures we have, remember, we put in those salaries that we used ESSER funds for. I think 3% is a good starting point for us. We just moved it out. But I think for this year, because notice it doesn't include the 1.6 million maintenance requirement.
No, and I agree. If that is the way the strategy is, I just want to make sure if I'm going to get beat over the head with our own number later, that it's, you know what I mean? Like,
No, I get it.
and it's already happened to some extent.
Yeah.
This forecasting is like, well, this is what you need.
Right.
And we're like, we're not
No,
saying
but
that's what we need.
yeah, the
We're
difference-
saying that's what we need.
The difference is somebody's saying that we need this for 40 years or 25 years out.
Right.
And all we're projecting, really, we're projecting out because we have to. But this year, as we did last year, we had a budget conversation with the administrative team today. We're going to be looking what our needs are, justifying our needs. There's a process we put in place. And we'll be going through looking at all the staffing needs, again, based on population. You know, we look at special ed based on student need because we could have a lower population, but we have students have greater needs. We're going to look at our curriculum needs. We've been promoting curriculum, looking at our professional development. We talked about some things today in executive session we need to look at. So I think 3% for us to start right now is a fair starting point. But as we do the budget process, we'll get a clearer picture of what our real needs are. Again, this is a preliminary.
It's a snapshot.
Yeah.
It's early. We don't even have projections. I know that.
Basically, yeah.
I'm just predicting the dialogue. That's all.
Yeah.
And along with that, I would also say that a lot of the dialogue to date's been on maintenance, right? And we've had this discussion. Is one of the dialogue points maybe, or you're showing a $1.6 million deficit, but you're not going to 4% to cover any of the maintenance costs.
Correct.
Right, because in reality, we should be going to 4%, knowing this mandate is in place and knowing we have to fund that.
Right. But I don't think that's why. I don't think if we if we said 2%, right, but then we come in higher, whatever the narrative, people are going to use, certain people will utilize that against us. So we're making a realistic, what we believe today, when Mr. Sands put this together, is a realistic ask, still showing that 1.6 million, because you've been clear all along that this is going to have to be covered one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. And there's been comments made that, well, you're given, there was a comment made in one meeting that, well, with $80 million, you should be able to come up with such and such. To me, that's just a naive statement, not understanding our budget. So I think this is realistic, but we also haven't gone through the process. We justify every single position. We know in elementary school, it's easy because you have X number of students in the school, X number of grades, we need X number of classes, but we see how volatile that is in the summer when people come and go and we've had to add classes. At the secondary level, there's a lot more variables. We want to make sure we have choice. We've had a push to increase AP classes. So we want to make sure, there's a lot more conversation to have. But we have those conversations and we keep on coming back to the school committee. We have those meetings and we bring that forward. So I think 3% is
I'm not beating you over the head. I'm making points and sometimes I make a point just so the rest of the committee can hear my perspective. That's all.
Yeah.
It's not to say that anyone's wrong. It's simply to state some facts. We're underfunded by $1.6 million.
Correct.
Right or wrong? Okay. But we're not asking for the maximum percentage. So that's something council is going to have to consider going into this, whether they actually want to go and take us the other way and say, you know what, you need to go to 4% because we don't want to sacrifice our housing. Correct? Or incorrect? Okay. And then we also have baked in fund balance here that eventually runs out because eventually you run a structural deficit. We have no more fund balance left. I'm assuming we're going to use it So that's another consideration moving forward that needs to be considered.
And I think we can sort of answer that because we're taking it away as you're going up at 3%, but you're taking.
Right. Part of the reason why we're going to 3% is because we've got to backfill the structural deficit, which we already have.
Yes.
Right. And then we have cell tower funds, which we're going to talk about, which are also baked in here. So all points of consideration, but I'm not beating you over the head.
No,
I
I just,
understand that this is a projection,
Start of
right?
the budget season, so it's just the preliminary.
Yeah.
sort of,
Okay.
and I do want to, just, and I know it's on my turn to talk, but I'd be remiss if, Mr. Pearson a couple of years ago had made the point that there's a sequence of events that are supposed to take place, and they hadn't been. And so now we're trying to, I had shared document that I had asked for the code because in my ignorance, I couldn't find it. And he shared it with me. I shared it with the town manager, right? So that they knew that they had to give us the revenue projection. So, but I feel that, we've had conversations, this is preliminary, your points are valid points, they're great points, because we've had those in smaller meetings and groups. But I feel that this is a realistic 3% right now where we're at. And because if the town finance director says 3.3 something, right, that we're obviously going to need that, where I can only go this year, like we're looking at this year, and this is our good starting point. So we just projected it out because by the code, we have to do that.
No, and it's a useful tool. I agree with James that this is the process. This is why we do it earlier, so we can have these discussions. So the points I'm making are really discussion points, for the committee's benefit to hear and the public to hear about the dialogue moving forward of the considerations of budget. That'll likely be heard over and over again moving forward over the next few months. So I'll end it there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson.
There's a process. This is good. Thank you. And another factor on this, I know Mr. Murray wanted more detail and more closer calculation if we can, but don't forget we have contract renewals in the middle of these projections. So you can't really do any calculations beyond that. Who knows what the next contracts will look like. Other than that, this is good. This will be good for the 20th. One question I have is in the FY 2022 column. It says proposed budget. Should that be approved budget?
Approved budget. I apologize.
Okay. No, it's okay. Don't apologize to me.
It's only one strike, Mr. Sands.
No. I look at it as I'm trying to help improve this. So if we give this to the council, they don't ask that question. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I don't have any questions. Thank you for this document and the follow-up. There was quite a lot of detail on all of it, actually, quite honestly. So the monthly, that's the next agenda item, right? Okay. What is that? 13. Oh, that's the other. Oh, okay. I'm losing track here. Okay, thank you. Any questions from the public on the projections? I know you don't have it in front of you, but. Oh, yeah, it's right there. I can't see it. Seeing none, then we can move on to 13, which is the FY22 budget update.
So I have Mr. Sands. There's two parts of that. One is just the document. The budget document tells you where we're at in terms of this budget. And then he has given you his budget update review. And some of those things I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on. I believe I am in my superintendent's report. But Mr. Sands is here again to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Florio, any questions on this report as of 11/30/21?
No questions, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any questions right now.
All right. Mr. Murray?
Two quick. One is, and you already know the question I'm going to ask is on the percentages. You say percent remaining budget, but I think you have it flipped. Wouldn't it be like, go to the first line? Well, you can't see it, but if you could scroll up.
Yeah.
In theory.
Okay, that was.
Oh, there you go. 30%, right?
Mhm.
But you've spent, or let's go to the next one, 17 million. You've spent out of your aggregate, and your actual to date is scrolling too fast.
Okay.
Go back up to the first line where it was 30%.
Right.
Keep going.
Just look there.
Go to line 24.
24.
All right. You have 44 million. I'm assuming that based on this, that's the actual budget.
Correct.
We've spent 13 million.
Correct.
Our actual remaining isn't 30%, it's 70%. No?
Correct. I'm just saying that we spent, it's how you look at it.
Okay.
Of that budget, we've spent 30% of that budget.
But that's not what the line item says. So I'm not
That's
trying to, like,
remaining.
I just want to make sure if this goes out, like it says percent remaining in budget. When I first looked at that, I'm like, uh-oh, we're not at the end of the year yet. And we're already,
I got you.
all right,
Thank
okay,
you.
you got me. So I don't need to beat that point up. Flipping those and looking at the numbers, I didn't have any other questions. So that's it. So if you could just as going to anybody else, I think that clarification would be helpful.
Yeah, well, this is public document, so we'll clean it up.
We'll clean it up. We'll put it on the 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just change.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson.
Question on, there's a couple line items here where we're spending, we've already spent more than our allocated budget for the line items. It's under professional services. I'll skip one of them, but one of them I want to ask about is virtual classroom membership, where our spending is 20,000, even though we budgeted 10,000. Any background on what's happening there?
Yes, I can tell you exactly what happened is, that was something that Mr. Coward put into play. It was supposed to be paid on at ESSER funds, and unfortunately, it crossed over. And I appreciate you finding that, but it was crossed over into the general fund as opposed to the ESSER fund.
Does that mean it's not eligible for ESSER reimbursement?
It is eligible for ESSER reimbursement, but it was tagged as a general fund.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I understand. Okay.
If you recall, that was the item I brought before you. It was last meeting and the meeting before to support the students who qualified for distance learning.
Yeah, okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but thank you for this report. Greatly appreciated. Anything from the public? Then I guess we can move on to the library.
All right. I don't know who's going to come up. Miss Walk, if Esther Walk, if you want to come up and you can bring everybody up and introduce everybody. But I know this is something that Esther had reached out to, I believe, Miss Patno, and spoken about our librarians were part of a documentary that really justifies the value of librarians. And I know there's, I had a conversation with several of them. They've been working with us, Mr. Pearson, myself, Dr. Dixon, on a circulation policy. We have to pick that up again, hopefully next week. So I think this is something about, just talking about the value of librarians and the role that they can play. We know if you followed our budget that we've made cuts in that area at times. And I know we've had conversations about, just the lack of resources we put into our libraries. And from a budgeting perspective, and I think I've shared with you, it's important to have your voice heard, but also come to our meetings, please. We've made a lot of cuts. You were there probably when, we laid off 383 teachers. Not that we don't need our 383 teachers. I know that it's a sore spot with everybody, and it should be. But I appreciate you guys coming forward. I appreciate your feedback and input, definitely in this process that we've had with the policy. You've been very supportive and brought a lot of expertise to the table. And so you're going to share with us, give us a little overview of this documentary, and then there's an opportunity for the committee, the public, to ask some questions. So thank you.
So can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Using my best teacher voice. So I'm Esther Wolk, and I'm currently the librarian at Hopkins Hill and Tyo. And I'm honored to have been part of Overdue, which is a project that the School Librarians of Rhode Island took on. It was filmed in the 2017-2018 school year and partially filmed in Coventry at Hopkins Hill and Tyo. So I'm going to introduce Deanna Brooks, who's the immediate past president of School Librarians of Rhode Island, to tell you a little bit more about the film. There are several people here who are involved in the film, and also several of the Coventry librarians will introduce at the end of the film and see if anyone has questions.
Thank you. Hi, again, my name is Deanna Brooks, and I was president at the time as that we were trying to get our documentary shown. It's School Librarians of Rhode Island. We felt we needed for others to understand what we do, how we contribute to student success, resources, faculty support, what a 21st century school librarian looks like now, getting rid of old stereotypes. Also in the face of budget cuts, to let them know that we do have an impact and we are valued. We had a Kickstart campaign that raised the money to do this, to put together this documentary, and it was 2 years in the making. Last year was the debut of the documentary on PBS News Weekly, and after its airing, it was chosen for the Rhode Island International Film Festival, the Green Mountain International Film Festival, and then was shown in Salt Lake City on day one of the American Association of School Librarians conference. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and start showing the film. It's very short. It's a short documentary. And then just take comments and questions and answers afterwards. And what I'll do is okay, thanks. And give, before we after we end, I'll let the librarians here introduce themselves as well, who can answer questions. Up on top. Sorry.
That one.
Oh, on the bottom? Sorry.
The stereotype is very 19th and 20th century.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm just trying to get that little box. I need you. So maybe it's that right there. Yeah.
And it worked
Oh, there it is.
for
Sorry.
the 20th century. My goal is to make library as cool as gym class and recess. So that's the goal.
The card catalog, tedious.
You know, you just went there, they gave you a book, and that was the end of it. There's a stereotype that
So here are the school librarians that were in the documentary. We have a few of them with us today. So I'd like to go ahead and poke at the screen.
Just shut it off. To the bottom right-hand corner of the set.
Of the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't really want to acknowledge it. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to have the librarians that are here, some that were in the film, introduce themselves so that you know who you're talking to. And start at least a small conversation before you continue with your agenda about what we saw. So I'm going to start with, well, Esther Wolf, we already heard from her. And this is Tasha White, who was a part of that documentary. She works in Providence. And Carol Burns, also with School Librarians of Rhode Island. I said, introduce yourself. I don't know everybody's name.
I'm Superintendent. I'm a Coventry librarian as well.
Hodginsville, right?
Hodgins.
Hodginsville, then Western. And you?
And I'm Michaela Reed. I'm the librarian at Western Elementary in
So, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, about the film, making the film, or about librarians in general and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, or.
I just want to say thank you so much for this presentation. I'm going to just go down the line and ask if there's any particular questions, and then I'll do my final comments. Mr. Florio.
Yes, I work at the Exeter West Greenwich High School, and I worked at Metcalf Elementary School and Waterloo and the middle school. And probably the high school has the most amazing librarian I've ever met by the name of Beverly Winner. And she does a lot of work with the children. She also has an assistant named Lorraine. And they really work hard to maintain the library and to make it a learning place and a place of creativity. And they work with every teacher in the school and every substitute teacher. And I've had the honor to fill in for Miss Winter sometimes. And it's an amazing job being a librarian. And thank you so much for what you do, because our kids learn so much from you. And the teachers. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was enlightening, because when I was in school, a librarian basically taught you how to use the card catalog, and it's amazing what you really do in a day. I mean, you see every child, and then there was one, you said you were from Western and Black Rock. So you have two schools that you have to, that's gotta be difficult. That's gotta be difficult, to see every student in both schools. Yeah,
And I was gonna say, so my first time, I was a classroom teacher in Providence for 13 years, a librarian for 5 in 2 schools with the 800 kids. And this is my first year in one school, and what a difference. I now have time for a kindness club. Kids come and see me in the morning because they want to just check in. Social emotional is at a peak right now, where I see kids who are in that documentary that I had in kindergarten and first grade, now in 4th and 5th grade, that are breaking down, that are lashing out because there's so much going on in the world, and yet I have this opportunity to, because I'm at one location,
right,
to have these different things, social emotional book clubs I run each day in the different grades, only because I'm at one location. So I just really want to, what a difference, instead of just when I did this documentary and spoke about being an itinerant, at one school, one full-time certified librarian is a world of difference.
and I can see that, and it's funny because I remember when they had to cut back on staff and, librarians, and you are integral parts of the school. And I can't see, cutting back, that really affects a child because now, you're teaching them everything. They're learning how to search through Google and, that parent can do only so much. My hat goes off to you. Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Clooney. And Mr. Murray.
First, thank you for showing us the video because these documentaries help. I think they help not only us as a school committee, but the community understand the value. It's impactful to see that because it gives me certainly a different perspective. I grew up in a world of World Book, and now it's all about Wikipedia, right? I never had to question, was this information valid? Because I always assumed it was. It was already vetted. I did my research and I wrote a paper. Today, I see it with my own kids. And I think a very good point was made here is that just having a smartphone in your pocket doesn't necessarily mean you have information. You could have good or bad information. And I think as a parent, we forget that there's just so much available. We're like, oh, just Google it. Well, that doesn't mean it's good information. We see that with adults all the time, right? On social media. We just had a whole discussion about that in executive session about, bad information. So I think it's critically important, those skills in life to know how to vet that information, understand how to do proper research. And it's a thought process that's taught and probably undervalued, including by many, including myself. When we're set to make difficult decisions at budget time, it's easy to sit here and express the value of a certain profession or teacher or whatever. It's a lot more difficult when you're facing budget punches and dealing with the public on, all right, now what gets cut? And this sort of thing creates the will of the community to say, no, this is valued. This is something that we value as a community, we value as a school community, and we need. It's not a want. So I see libraries changing, including even the town library across the way here. I just had a discussion with, town I work in, the director there about how do we better integrate those services. And my hope is that in our own district, we can see that, more integration with our own curriculum. Going back to looking at it as a valued resource that can boost and elevate our individual curriculum in our classes, as opposed to sort of an itinerant that we just send our kids to go, like a study hall when I was younger, go stick them in there. And if they need resources, that's fine. That's where the books are. Well, guess what? It's less about books now. It's more about the doing and the STEM and everything else. So I know I'm long-winded, but, I want some value to come out of this. So I hope you'll continue this with other school committees. I hope that, it sounds like you've gotten some great traction from the film festivals and just getting the word out. I want you to just know that it is valued and it is helpful. As a school committee member, one of my biggest frustrations is dealing with cuts and trying to figure out how we manage everything and knowing that things are vital. But having a platform to advocate on your behalf is always welcomed and appreciated. So I appreciate the tools to help me do my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson.
I'm a Britannica man myself.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
You said you're a World Book person. I'm Encyclopedia
Britannica.
Britannica. So,
Yeah, me too. Britannica. Yeah.
just kidding.
Oh, no.
No, thank you for showing this. Very insightful. A lot of good information there. And again, I think it's good for the community to see things like that, so they can understand how important libraries are to our students. And I guess the only thing that I'll say is looking forward to continuing the policy work, hopefully next week, and we can get that library policy we're working on in place. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I don't have much more to add from the comments that have been made, except that I really thought the documentary was awesome. So appreciative of the work that was done to put this out and to try to educate the communities, school committees, just in general. And I think the whole premise of it that, libraries have changed. It's been a remarkable change from when I was a kid. I'm 69, so you can imagine what my library experience was like when I was in elementary and middle school and even in high school. It really was a quiet place. And I'm a big proponent of using library space and making it into makerspace as well, because I'm a science person. And so the whole STEM notion of using that space and letting kids talk through projects is just an incredible, wonderful idea. But again, the documentary was fabulous. I so appreciate your passion and your willingness to elevate what people think about libraries and the resource you folks are for our students, as opposed to just learning how to do a card catalog, for example. It's so much more than that and so much more in depth. And, I've been on school committee for a while now, and I've seen some of the cuts, and every time it happened, it is very difficult to live with. Again, thank you for coming today, and thank you for all the work you do, and really appreciate it.
I want to thank you for taking the time to see our documentary and to listen to us. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Anybody else in the public like to make any comments before we let these very weary librarians go home, considering their case lots?
Myself, actually, again, just going back to the being at one school now, even so, province we're using our American Reading Company, and I'm able to curate all of these resources for teachers. They go right along. So right now we have a class that's quarantine. They're just using for my Google Library all of these leveled libraries that are already curated for them because we're training how to do that. And that's we have 5 new roles. Like you get 5 for 1 when you have us. So I'm just saying, think about all the potential you have in really having your school have full-time librarians. I'm just pushing for that because I'm just letting you know, there's so many different ways that they can support the teachers, the families, the students. It's just so big. Not only the things that we are trained in, but then our position, because we do see everyone in the school. So we do know all of them, right? They come to us. We're that safe place where there's no judgment. They get to find what interests them. They get to choose their choice. When I was a classroom teacher, I said, you're in the red bucket, you're in the yellow bucket. Now it's what interests you. How can you find what you want instead of just a teacher's role is different, right? They're teaching them how to read. We're teaching them to love and find that passion. So I have a lot to say about that. It is tremendous. It is a huge difference instead of just being that person that's pulled from 2 places, like you said. And now you're just like, okay, so I'm going to help you, but I won't be back till Wednesday, right? Instead of I'll see you in the morning. And so I really think that's such an important thing when you're thinking about this role and how much bang you can get for your buck when you're thinking about it. A librarian takes on the role of training teachers in different resources that are coming out because they're ever evolving. It's always coming out. We're training the students in how to evaluate their information. There's even a website that's all fake stuff that you can lead your students to so that they can see that, right?
Yeah.
And it was created by people to show them how easy it is to fall into that trap. And it's not vetted, like you said, right? My dad got me to throughout until he could afford the answers of the encyclopedias. And now my 5-year-old niece can go ahead and post on YouTube. And so is that real? And so the kids really understanding that, what's safe and how they can handle that. That's all of what we do. These girls are rock stars at that whole makerspace and coding, which is all the 21st century skills of where we're going. I have teachers coming up to me right now just saying, thank you for this. The kids look forward to coming and being able to have these discussions where it's about them instead of what has to get taught to them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very eloquent. Anything else from anyone? Again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming tonight and sharing this documentary with us. Really very much appreciated, and it's very eye-opening. So
Thank you. Come visit us in our libraries too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 15, School Building Committee update, including November 29th, 2021 Town Council meeting discussion. So, Mr. Murray.
So, yeah, I think that's a good jumping off point, actually. No, because I was going to start off in a different way, but in talking about the building project, I wanted the committee and the public, who's here and maybe watching, to think about what it would be like to have a middle school at the 21st Century Media Center, not looking like a lot of what's in the video, but actually having the resources and the technology supports and the ability to have STEM and the ability to have all of the curriculum that many of the districts in the state don't have. To think about a site that when you go into, you don't have to sit in line as a parent all the way back to Route 117 until you can drop your kid off because the circulation is just so bad. Not having to worry about mold, not having to worry about, floors caving in, having a food service program that actually is sustainable and works, and that you don't have to go a football field away to take food to the cafeteria or stand in line like my daughter does or doesn't do because she's just tired of doing it and doesn't take advantage of the food service program because the food takes so long to even dispense because of the format, just chooses not to participate. And some kids need that service. And having the resources in a classroom that really caters to today's curriculum. That is all of what's on the table, including touching all the other schools, including the science labs, the things that the kids at the high school desperately need. We talked tonight about security, and I can't get into the specifics, but I'll tell you that we need safety mechanisms and other upgrades to our schools that we're not doing. The lockdown identified some issues. We need to address those issues one way or another, but one easy way to do it is to urge our council members to vote for this bond, because those mechanisms will be included in that bond. We will be funding safety. And not only that, we'll qualify for bonuses that will pay the majority sum of the money. To me, it's a no-brainer. We talked about, we talk about camera systems. We talk about all these things the kids need. I saw a post on Facebook about these little locking mechanisms that were on the bottom of the door, and there was a whole thread about it. We need to advocate for this, raise money for that. You don't need to raise money for it. Go out and vote. Go out and press your council member to let you vote on this bond, because there's a majority share that is going to be paid for by the state. That is all included in this project. All of it. The building committee has done an outstanding effort. And the last meeting of council, what was it? What was the date?
November 29th.
November 29th. So I've personally given multiple presentations to council. The building committee came and gave a presentation to council. This last one has gone to great lengths to do financial forecasts of Mr. Sands, has laid out a case backed up by 2,000 pages of documents and studies by professionals that in excess of $300,000, and has put everything at the feet of the town council. And I'm not going to mince words. I think at this point, the project is at risk. There is no doubt. Because what it's coming down to is, out of one side of the mouth is you're not doing enough to address the Jacobs report and all those things. So we have a clear presentation on how we are addressing it. And out of the other side of the mouth, it's too much money. But yet we still have to fund $67 million over the next 25 years, regardless, because of a state mandate, the minimum maintenance requirement that says that we have to contribute 3% of our operating budget. Well, the state will scoop housing aid. We'll take money from the town regardless. So either way, we're going to have to fund $67 million over the next 25 years. The only difference is, in our scenario, we get the majority share at 57.8% back from the state. Majority of a project. Not only that, we get a ton of improvements done for a 21st century learning community. And we're finally moving ahead of the ball. We're finally at a point in Coventry where we can hang on hat on something and say we've done something for our community. I'm saying all this not to sit on my soapbox, but because I need my fellow school committee members to weigh in here. I need you to get with your council member. I need you to make them understand the value of this. If you need me, I will sit them down with them with you. But I need you to be the liaison. You are the ambassador to the school committee. The building committee has done everything they could to bake up a project that is reasonable, affordable. In my opinion, it's affordable, and has given all the data to the council that they need to make a decision. And the only decision in front of them is to whether or not to allow the voters to weigh in. That's it. The voters can decide whether this is a priority or not. So all those people, and I've said it, I'll say it again, who sit there on the soapbox and talk about stripping the voters of their financial town meeting rights to vote on a budget are some of the same people saying, yeah, I think I'm not going to push this forward to allow a vote on a building project that is a once in a lifetime opportunity that, by the way, has almost 60% reimbursement from the state, because we're just not sure. And by the way, the building committee has also promoted reusing debt that's already on the books that is falling off that could pay a majority sum of our payments. So debt that was incurred years ago to build Washington Oak and do improvements at the high school that is now finally falling off the books. Those payments will not need to be made next year. All we've asked is reallocate that payment to this new debt, pay our share, and use the money that the taxpayers are already funding. I think that's a fair request, but it's been blatantly ignored for the most part by the majority. And I'm extremely frustrated by that, not only as a school committee member, not only as the building chairman, but as a taxpayer, because I have two kids, one of which now is still in the district. One I've, as many of you know, have sent elsewhere for my own personal reasons. But I believe in the schools in Coventry. I grew up here. I believe we have great teachers. We have great teachers. We have a great educational system, but we're not providing the supports that they need. This is one way we can do it. We can do it in an affordable fashion where the majority is on the state. And regardless, we're going to have to put money in anyway. And that was the kind of the crux of the argument. We either do Band-Aids year after year, or we take a big swing at it and we do something substantial and impactful for our community, and at least allow the voters to weigh in. So I did have a meeting. I've had multiple meetings, and we had a meeting of the building committee the other night. I think most of the committee shared those same sentiments I just iterated. And Kathy, you can attest to that.
Yep.
I think there are a couple of council members who truly understand it, and mainly because they've been involved in it. They're on the front lines. They truly understand the project. They have taken the time to get educated. They understand the value. I'm not sure, and this is no slight on the other council members who may not be in cooperation with this, is that they've really taken the time to vet this. And so I'm going to be reaching out to them to offer also to meet with them. But I hope that you, as my fellow school committee members, will also do that. And I can certainly sit down and we can, because I think once they have the real information in front of them, the decision is clear. I did have a meeting today with the town's financial advisor, the town manager, town council president, Ms. Shockley, who's on the building committee, Mr. Sands. Somewhat productive. I think some questions were answered. It's becoming clear this is coming down to a few key questions. One is affordability. And the affordability question really comes down to a couple of things. One is the ability of the town to incur future debt. So as was presented by Ms. Mills, there is, once you take on a certain amount of debt, the state requires that you not exceed a certain debt threshold, which is 3% of your gross community value, gross land value. So essentially the $4 billion we haven't assessed ad valorem taxes, we cannot exceed that. What has been unclear to this point, what has not been accurately projected, in my opinion, is the fact that once you take on that debt, you pay it over time. We also have debt that also falls off over time. There is a sense that we're only going to have $10 million after we fund this project, potentially fund this project, to fund any future projects. And I would say that is factually incorrect, because yes, year one, that may be the case, but it quickly, as debt falls off and we pay those payments, ramps up. Most of the other town projects, including roadways, if you look at many other towns, are typically in the range of $5 to $10 million. That's a big project for a roadway sort of bond for a municipality. Schools, unfortunately, cost a lot of money to fund. So it's probably the largest, and it typically is, of a community that you will fund. So managed correctly, I believe that this town can certainly manage it and actually benefit from this process. But that's not my call. That's the council process, and that's the town manager's call and finance director's call to make their recommendations. The other thing is the funding of the bond. So we have a financial town meeting process, which makes it extremely difficult to predict with a reasonability that we will be able to fund additional debt or anything, right? Every year we go through this, we have additional expenses always. We go to the taxpayers and they either have a choice of saying yes or no. And if they say no, we essentially say we level fund, but the truth is we have to cut because everything goes up. So it's a reasonable concern. One thing I brought up today as a creative solution to that was to go ahead and allow the bond ballot to move forward to the voters, allow the people to weigh in. Should it move forward, the council could put in place in their resolution that it will not issue the bond notes until funding is in place. And they can certainly project out what funding is required through the normal appropriations budget. So picture that the people vote on it. Now the council has the bond notes to issue, which we have a little bit of time to issue those, or the bands. And we could certainly have the option to exercise their ability to either issue the notes or not. Some communities hold on bonds for many years. In this case, we do have a limited time frame because the building authority has certain time frames to qualify for the incentives. I think what I've been asking for is a bit of creativity. There are ways to get this done. There are ways to move forward. That is one option out of, I think, 3 that I presented so far about trying to put enabling legislation that would have a binding question on the levy, which I still believe we can do. There are ways to get that issue rectified. All of these are challenges that are surmountable, in my opinion. So, in the discussions that you hopefully have with your council member is stop looking at the hurdles and start finding solutions. One of the things I said a couple times the other night in my building committee meeting is I'm tired of hearing the things we can't do. I want to hear about the things we can. I want to hear about solutions to the problem and not, complaining about, well, the council's doing this, the town's doing that. Understood, received. But at this point, it's not getting the job done. So I need people to lean on their council members. I need people who value schools to lean on the council members to say that this is important, because they're telling me they're not hearing a thing. They're hearing crickets. And that doesn't bode well for this project. It doesn't bode well for the members of the building committee that have spent an enormous amount of time on this, the 2 years worth of time, many of which are community members who are just, average people who value our schools. So sorry to get on my soapbox tonight. It's been a frustrating few weeks, to say the least. I'm not throwing stones at council. They are doing their best to vet the project based on the information provided to them. I will say that there's been some, how do I say it, Harold? Some disagreements between the information provided from the town administration and the building committee. What I have asked simply in our last meeting, and I continue to ask of the council members I have the ear of, is ask the town administration to simply shoot holes in the plan that we provided. We provided a very clear pathway to get this done. Tell me why it doesn't work. Don't tell me of 50 other ways that it doesn't work. Tell me why our plan doesn't work. And if they can convince me of that, then I'm a reasonable town member. I'll go along with it, but I'm not convinced that the plan we laid out will not work and is not reasonable for the taxpayers. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that you have. I do want to put out 2 last things. One is there are meetings on the 13th and the 20th. 13th is to discuss finances. That's this Monday. They were going to run projection scenarios on a couple different scenarios, one of which was a half project. Now I'm going to blatantly say it's a half project. As you may or may not know, the committee already reviewed what would be a half project. I did it because I knew it would come up. The council president asked us to look at it. The architect presented it, and almost unanimously, the committee voted it down because it was felt that the project was basically going to be seen after it was done as nothing got done. You know, it was what I'll call a Coventry project. We go halfway. That's what we've done in this community. We kind of either value engineer it to death, or we just put the Band-Aids on it. So that the finances will be discussed. I fully anticipate that a reduced project may be talked about. On the 20th will be the final vote. I've asked for that because what I've blatantly said is the committee's put in a lot of time. It's respectful, regardless of how you feel, to put your name down and vote on a project that the building committee presented, which is the $89 million project, which, by the way, isn't $89 million. It's $80 million after the initial state incentive, and the overall project's $67 million, right? All in with interest. The total project is $131 million. Our share is $67 million. All right, so do the math on that. We're not paying the majority share. So we talk about $89 million. It's actually $67 million over 25 years. That's a pretty fair deal for the kind of project that we're talking about. Think of East Providence and the building they just unveiled, and the pride in that community just off of that one building. That is the type of project this is. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio, comments, questions from Mr. Murray?
No comment.
Mrs. Thelonian?
I have comments.
Okay.
Number one, thank you very much. I know this is a thankless job. I know what you're going through. I can see it, it's frustrating. It was frustrating for me to listen to the town council meeting. I shut it off in the middle of it because I just couldn't deal. It was very frustrating. What I think our town needs to know is that everybody buys houses because of the school system. If you've got a rotten school system, they're not going to come and buy the houses. We've got $500,000-$600,000 houses. They are not going to pay that kind of money if our schools are falling apart. They're going to go somewhere else. And once that starts happening and those new builds start staying there because nobody wants to come here, then our house prices are going to start going down. So, that's the way things are. House prices, the first thing a realtor says to you, oh, the school system is amazing. That's the first thing you see on a Zillow ad is about the school system. So, I'm going to do my best to talk to my council person. I know my husband has spoken to him a couple of times, but I am going to do my best to try and get him to see our way. And
thank you.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Pearson?
I too tried to watch the November 29th council meeting. I didn't get all the way through it, although I didn't turn it off in disgust. I ran out of time. I agree, Mr. Murray, that some outreach is required because what I heard was a very disjointed conversation where everyone had a different idea and a different perspective on the project. And I think at this point, again, 2 years in, with all the presentations and all the details that have been provided, they really should be on the same page. And they really, whatever questions they have, get their answers and put this before the voters, because it really is up to the voters whether or not they want to fund this bond and improve our school buildings. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for your thank you for your hard work, because this is probably more than you anticipated when you first took on this role. So thank you for continuing to advocate and push for this.
Thank you. One more thing.
Sure, go ahead.
I do believe that if nothing else, we should have a say in, they shouldn't just make a blanket. Well, you know what? We're not going to put it out to the voters, because that's what, this town wants. They wanted that. So I think we should at least have an opportunity to vote. That's me.
Thank you. My only comment is that that meeting certainly was extremely discouraging. And I agree with all the comments shared so far that we should be in a better place right now. And 100%, I believe there should be some creativity as to how to look at how we can fund this project. Not if we can fund this project, but how we would fund this project. We did not, as a building committee, go down this road thinking, oh, we'll just come up. I mean, quite honestly, let's face it, we could have spent way more. We came up with that number and that project because that was what we were advised we could afford. And that was bond counsel. And again, we didn't do this lightly. And so to be told now we can't afford it and why, we should probably do half the project just feels like a complete letdown. I don't understand it, quite honestly. And I even have asked the town council president, if I were a town council person, I'd say, I don't want to know what we can't do. I want to know what we can do and figure it out creatively. There are always ways to basically look at a situation. And there are many ways to look at numbers as well. I think Mrs. Shockley said it at our building committee meeting the other night that numbers can be slanted depending on what your bias is. And if your bias is we can't afford it, you will present numbers that prove we can't afford it. If your bias is, hey, let's think creative. This is a real need. I think all the town council members realize the need. They've been in our schools, many of them. They understand the need. It's not a question that they think, oh, we don't need it. They know we need it. And so with that in mind, it seems to me that they should make a decision based on the need and ask their budget people and the town manager, how do we work this through? And like Mr. Murray said, the building committee has come forward with some numbers. Our finance director, I was on the subcommittee of that building committee that was the finance team. We have presented more than one scenario, and yet we have never been told why that's wrong. That can't work. Or even if they say it's wrong, they don't go into the detail as to why. And so that's been very disappointing to the building committee. And I'm just really hopeful that between now and the 20th, we can make some headway with the town council. And I agree that all of our citizens need to be advocates. And the town council, I think even at that meeting on the 29th, said they haven't heard much of anything from the community. So if you are concerned about the way our schools are in such disrepair, and you're concerned about what our children will ultimately get here in Coventry, obviously our educators are extremely competent and doing a fabulous job, but it's tough when you work in a building that is falling apart, quite honestly. People get used to it, but even our kids get used to it until they see something different. And I'll just bring everybody's memory to the East Providence, the new high school. If you talk to the people in East Providence, they are so proud of that new high school. How could you not? The Providence Journal did a big, huge article on it. It hit all the news channels, the local news channels, and the kids are excited and the teachers are excited to be in a beautiful 21st century building. And it will be a source of pride for Coventry if we can rebuild our middle school and do significant maintenance, repairs, and just, making our elementary schools fit to live in, quite honestly. There are some of our schools that don't even have enough electrical plugs for our computers. I mean, it's more than you can bear, quite honestly. And so I am hopeful that the town council will see fit to consider other options, demand other more creative solutions, and move forward with a positive vote to put this on the ballot on the 20th.
So I'll do my last plea here.
Yeah. go
So
ahead.
can I count on you to reach out to Ms. Ludwig,
Oh, yeah,
Councilwoman?
yeah.
Dave, can I count on you to reach out to Councilwoman Lima? Can I count on you?
Oh,
Can I
yes,
reach out
absolutely.
to Mr. LeBlanc? Can I count on you? No, I know you don't. She's on my building committee, but Ms. Shockley, I think would be a good conversation.
Yeah, I've got the easiest one here.
Yeah, you do.
That's not fair.
But I would say, and Kathy can attest to this, and I will give credit to Councilwoman Shockley, not because she's a school advocate, because that has nothing to do with it. I am a believer in what's right is right, and politics and whatever aside, I truly believe in a project, numbers work fine. If they don't, and you've seen me do that, right? She has been one of the people, including Council President Dixon, who have committed to become learned on the project, understand the project and understand the numbers, as opposed to just broad brushing and taking what is plopped in front of them. They've done the research. So those who question the motives of the school friendly, they're just going to give it a pass. I would beg to differ. They have done nothing to indicate they are giving a pass. They've asked me some very tough questions. They've asked Harold for information. They continue to ask Harold for information financially. They are vetting this project, which I believe every council member should be doing. This is an important decision for the town.
Yep.
But I do want to thank her and Council President Dixon for doing their research, doing their job.
I agree. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Levis, comments.
I'll be brief. I promise. I know I say that and I never am, but Mr. Florio. And I know, let's face it, there, and you all are elected and I know it's a thankless job, but I watched that meeting and I was infuriated. I mean, so I was infuriated. I'm listening to people that I've listened before who talk about this has to go to the public. We need to, everything needs to go to the public. And yet they're saying, well, no, this is my decision. I'm listening to individuals make comments that, we can't really build a school because we may need a garage. I am also listening to a council where my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that in terms of this bond, the necessity of school construction, it has to go through the school building committee. That I'm hearing numbers thrown out, let's do it $10 or $11 million. And I think that's part of the issue is that they're not really aware of this process and their responsibility, because to me, the school building committee was adamant when that partial project was brought before us, right? And it was like an 8-1 vote that we need to go forward. And so again, I'm not as politically astute as many people sitting here and probably many people in Coventry, but my understanding of this process is there's one project before them and they need to vote on that project. And I feel that there's all these other conversations going and there should just be one project. My understanding is I don't see now, maybe if the school building committee decided to bring something else forward, but that hasn't happened. So I think that's part of the issue is that there's a process and we just need to follow that process. And, I'm hoping that this, again, I don't live here. I work here. I spend a lot of time here. I'm invested in the families and students, but I'm just confused because I feel like I hear all these other numbers and it should just be this project. And, because many of those council members have continuously said we need to get the public more involved. To me, that would be the natural process here. And yet I'm hearing different stories. And I'm hoping that, nobody wants to hear me. The council doesn't want to hear me go and say these things in front of them. It doesn't help. I get that. But it needs to be said by some people, because if you watch these meetings and you listen, and you hear that same sentiment. If you go back and watch the meeting, I was only there part of the school building committee meeting, but people were adamant about this process and what we've done and, what's been presented and the feasibility, the affordability of it. And so, I guess I'm reaching out to the community and saying your voice needs to be heard. We heard the same thing. Ms. Shockley had said she thinks 10 people had reached out to her. Dr. Dixon had mentioned a couple of teachers had reached out. But I think it's important for them to hear because we've seen that. I've seen that in other things that I've presented. We've presented to the school, to the council when they've heard from the constituents and made a huge difference. So, but I just feel that there's a, again, in my eyes, it's double standards. You can't handle one situation a certain way and something else. But, and I'm not trying to put fuel in the fire, but I'm trying to call it as I see it. I think that's important. There's a lot of emotion in that school building committee, and I'm hoping that they show up on the 13th and voice their concerns. So, I appreciate everybody reaching out to their council members. I think it's important, but I think the power lies in the citizenship here in Coventry, and I'm hoping that they speak up because I listened to that entire conversation, and I heard a lot of different messages that were very alarming to me about the process. So that's all I want to say.
Madam Chair, can I say something?
Sure.
Luke, the state is going to come out with a report on the 16th about our bond for every city and town. And from what I understand from the general treasurer is that our debt is not as bad as the council's portraying. That report will not be given to me until after it's released publicly on the 16th. I intend to get that report and make copies or ask Mr. Levis or Patty Martin to make copies of that report for every council person and every school committee person so they can review it and look at it. It'll be absolutely contrary to what the town manager is saying and what Lisa Mills is saying. I didn't want to say anything about that this evening, but
yeah, I don't know.
Please.
I don't know what that's going to say. I will tell you that our debt schedules are in the audit and we've addressed those. Listen, I'm not, and I'll keep it really brief. I understand this is a tough decision for council. It should be. It should be. It should be a weighing of the cost benefits of any project. In this particular scenario, there is no other capital project on the table. Hasn't been for some time. There is no other capital project I'm aware of that would qualify for more than half reimbursement from the state. There is no other project that would offset our current maintenance mandate, which is coming anyway. That's going to solve our financial hole, which we already went through earlier in our budget. We have a $1.6 million hole. And then somehow we're just expected to come up with this money. How? I think there's an expectation that we're just going to somehow cut staff, do whatever we need to do, and just somehow backfill that hole. It ain't going to happen. I don't see a way to get there. Numbers sometimes don't lie. Sometimes they do. I think in this case, they're not. So, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing the report. Hopefully council does. I hope they, we've already presented pieces of the audit that clearly show, and then Ms. Mills says too. Those numbers definitely don't lie. So it's all there if they actually want to ask the right questions and look at it over time. Look at that debt over time as opposed to a snapshot on day one. So I'll leave it there.
I spoke to Ms. Shockley about it because I know Mr. Magazzina. I've known his chief of staff for over 20, almost 30 years. And he specifically asked me how things were going with the school building committee. And I said, it doesn't look too good. He said, well, he says, I can't give you the report until it's released publicly until the 16th. And then I have his personal cell number. Then I'll call him up and I'll say, can I have that report on Coventry? And it's up to him whether he gives it to me or not. So we'll see. But that's why I'm kind of hesitant to speak about it. But if I get it, everyone's going to get a copy of it. So this way, everyone can evaluate what is actually happening with our bond debt. which is why I think the council is kind of reneging on the 2-year commitment they gave to you. That for 2 years, council said, we'll bring it before the voters. Even Hillary Lima told me she may not support it, but she would support it going to the voters. So I don't know what more to say other than see what happens. Yeah, it's not the first time I've been disappointed on the school committee. Probably, right, Ms. Pat? No,
Exactly true.
Positive attitude there.
that's it, So that's why I've been awful quiet. Okay.
So before we move on, I'm going to ask the public if there are any comments. So, and could you come forward? So I should have asked the librarians to come forward because I don't think people online can actually hear what people say unless the microphone's on. But
Kelly Aronakis, Coventry Teachers Alliance. It was nice to hear the conversation tonight, but I would just ask and possibly try to remind that there's two different audiences. So those that tune into a school committee meeting are not necessarily those that turn to town council and vice versa. So I hear some really good conversation here. And I just ask that you have those conversations live when you're at the town council meetings as well. Because I think when misinformation is given or data may be manipulated and it's not addressed, challenged, queried, the whole audience that watches the other side is missing a piece. So obviously a lot of teachers and school and personnel contact me after these meetings, but at the town council side, and probably from organizing efforts a couple of years ago, is I have a ton of parents who are not employees that reach out to me and ask a ton of questions and tell me what they're doing. And I know a lot of them have said they call their town council members. So for town council, they haven't gotten phone calls. That doesn't strike me as right because parents are calling me and they're asking me questions and I'm referring them to the building committee. I'm referring them to their school committee people and their council people. But I just think that the things that you say here, if you could also say them there, the school gets what you say, the school personnel, like look who your audience is. You don't have any non-school employees in the audience today. The town council does. So if you could just repeat the things you say here, there, and ask those questions of your counterparts and maybe challenge some of the data that's presented, I think it would be very, very helpful. And I'm working on something right now, and I'm going to keep it relatively low key for now, just for the council members, but there's a lot of data that I hear that makes me crazy. So for example, the town and its fiscal responsibility and all the things they're doing and the whole pension issues. And I will quote the town manager saying, the teacher pension has a 19% unfunded liability and 43 million plus. I don't know where he got that. 19 million plus 43. Hey, it's not the teacher's pension, it's the SRP pension. And it's funny that the SRP pension has a $19 million liability when it has 250 active employees. The police pension with a $60 million liability and less than 60 active employees. So which side is doing their due diligence to fix their pension problem? The SRP, who make less than a third of what the police officers make, changed their own pension, halved it. Hence, it's a $19 million liability for 250 employees versus a $60 million liability for less than 60. And the only other thing I want to say is, look, you're much kinder than me with your words at times. You use the word halved a lot. They want to do half this. They want to do half this. Well, let's just call a spade a spade. When you half it, you're half-assing it. And we've done that in Coventry long enough. And I'd like you to say that out loud because it's true. And we're getting to a point as a teacher in this district, as a union president, and as a parent of children in this district, that I'm done. And I'm done saying, okay, we'll wait and we'll give back and we'll wait. That at some point, either Kelly parent or Kelly union president is going to call OSHA. And that middle school is going to get closed down. And I want to see what the town's going to do with 1,000 middle school students. Where are you going to put them? Because they can look at it legally and they can ask their council. That liability becomes on the town, no longer the school. So at some point, enough is enough. Craig's been trying to work at Western. It's nice to say Western doesn't have heat. Again today, Western doesn't have heat. Do you know what it's like to be in a room? It's 40 degrees, 45 degrees. These are our kids. If you don't care about the adults, they're our kids. So at some point, the adults are going to say enough is enough. And I'm not going to second party who the adult is. I'm telling you, I will say enough is enough. And if schools have to be closed down because they're not going to be fixed, then so be it. And that's not a threat to you. It's just, I feel as if I don't say it, It'll be a blindside, and I don't blindside. So please say the same comments you're saying on this side of the aisle to the other side. So at least the other constituency hears what you're saying as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say, yeah, I just want to say a quick thing. Because I appreciate the comments and you're preaching to the choir in many ways, clearly. But I do want to defend the committee and some of us that have presented multiple times, including about a month ago, 2 hours, that presentation that I put on. And then the building committee gave another hour-long presentation to the council. And I've gone probably more than a dozen times in the past year. So either they're not listening or they just not understanding. But, you know, we've provided that information, but I agree. And on the 13th, I did iterate to the building committee that I fully expected they will be there. And I put it on them to write emails and make the comments because they're tired of hearing from me. They need to hear from the building committee members who are community members who have worked really, really hard on this, who are in the background and unfortunately don't get a lot of credit or due respect. So I just want you to know we hear you. We will be there. We keep pounding. There's a lot going on in the background. I can tell you, they can tell you. And it's unfortunate we're here, but things like the pension, that stuff is when it comes to operational budget, we'll have that whole discussion, I'm sure. But I want to keep it clean on the building side because I think this is a good project, Untainted. This is a logical project with clear information that sells it. And so without getting into all the disruption and noise of the town as a whole, which quite frankly is trying to creep in from the other side of banging all the other noise and convoluting this project, I'm trying to actually keep it clean and say, this is simple. To your point, at some point, the middle school, we will be in trailers. So what do you want to do? Do you want them banging on your door in 5 years or do you want to address it now?
It's not going to be 5 years.
And that could be the case. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Anyone else want to make a comment? So my final comment is that I encourage anyone out there in live streaming and anybody else who we can maybe get to should attend the Monday meeting. People have been saying the 13th. For those of us who lose sight of dates sometimes, especially during the holiday season, the 13th is Monday. And I believe that we should show up in force at that meeting and be willing to, depending on when public comment is, because they handle their meetings differently than the school committee. You might have to wait till the end to actually have public comment. They typically don't allow discussion in between agenda items like we do. So it's kind of difficult to have to sit through because their meetings have been going pretty long as well. They can go as long as 10 o'clock. And I've tried to attend all of the ones that had anything to do with the building committee, obviously. But even I have given up at some point because it gets so late. I will appeal to President Dixon. She can allow public comment during agenda items if she so chooses. So hopefully she can make an exception in the way they handle their meetings and actually allow, I'm not sure where we will be on that agenda or if we are. I think it's going to be, I haven't seen it yet. It probably was posted today, the Monday meeting.
We're not on these.
No, I know we're not, but they're going to talk about school bonding things. As far as I know, that's why, yes. Yeah, they're going to, I don't know what time and where it is on the agenda.
They have a Zoom portion of it, right?
They do. Yeah, they do. And so you could make a comment if you because they do allow it, ours don't. But they do have that Zoom ability that you can raise your hand and actually comment. But if you can at all make it, I encourage you all to make the Monday meeting of the town council.
I will let the committee know that night, and just as a quick point, I will not be there until late, hopefully, because I have to be at the SK Town Council meeting. That's a work obligation. So as soon as I can get out, I will get out and I will come here.
Yep.
So later is benefiting me, but probably not others. So,
Yeah.
but if people notice that I'm not there, it's because
That's
I have
the
a work
reason.
obligation. I want them thinking I'm bowing out.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to agenda item 16, the superintendent report.
So the COVID update, we have seen an increase in cases. So far this week at the high school, we have 30 cases. That's 30 cases of students, I want to say. We have our dashboard that people can continue to follow. We're having a vaccination clinic, the second round for students 5 to 11 tomorrow night at the high school. That'll be 4 to 7. I've reached out asking for volunteers. And again, I still believe, and I'm not a doctor, but everything we're hearing is the number one way for us to address this is through vaccination. And there's a lot of dynamics going on in our schools in terms of the testing. It's taking, they're supposed to hopefully fix the problem, but we had an email today from the Department of Health. I had an email, actually. One of our COVID nurse had reached out, and they're seeing, the cases, the number of tests they're going through, like this Dominion lab, were, double what they typically have. And so we've seen people go with a 3 to 4 day turnaround. So if somebody's out or has symptoms and waiting, and so we're trying to refine that, because we feel sometimes there are people that have symptoms, but the symptoms aren't what the guidance says. You have one of these major symptoms of 2 of these. So we're trying to refine that to make sure that people are going out for the right symptoms. We've had people go out for symptoms that aren't related to COVID and staying out, and we have to do whatever we can do, because I was on the news the other day about staffing. We had 179 people out last Friday. They weren't all out waiting for a test, but many of those individuals, we were told, were waiting for a test. So, we don't want to get into a situation. I see Miss Jacquard every morning writing emails early in the morning to her staff, and like, here's the day, here's the plan, and she does an incredible job. But for how long can we do this, right? This is the reality. I'm telling people, let's get through this year. And I had a conversation with some of the key people at the Department of Health the other day, just saying, I don't see, and this is just my opinion, and who am I? And, I don't see this being sustainable. Like, we've done this. We didn't think we were going to be in this year. I can't see coming back next year and saying we're going to do this. Something's got to give, and I don't know what that is. So anyways, we're still in the midst of it, dealing with it. And again, we should start testing hopefully the end of next week. I know it's right before vacation. We've sent out consent forms. Something that's very alarming is and maybe the numbers increased today, I didn't get it, but this week we had 5 consent forms for testing back from the high school, 5. So it's, we're trying to do, there are a lot of kids who are athletes who are, again, I've been told that maybe 80% of our high school students are vaccinated, but I haven't seen that from the Department of Health. I think that our school nurse had given me that number, and I'm, but I'd love to see what our numbers are. But it's going to start impacting our sports. The seasons start tonight. We have the girls, and I believe tomorrow night the boys basketball, and we're trying to do everything we can do to keep people safe. But it's everywhere. It's spiking right now. So that's the COVID update. Myself and Mr. Sands, we look at our responsibility for the financial is to work with the town, and I meet with the town manager every week. Mr. Sands has had meetings set up, but I believe of the meetings, and the town manager, I meet every week, unless, he's out, I'm out, but we communicate that. I put some things on here because there's information that's coming from the council to the committee about certain things, whether it's a conversation I have with a committee member or an email. So I want to make you aware, but I'm not looking for the committee to take action on things, but I want to be clear about a couple things. One is that we had a meeting with the town manager and the finance director several weeks ago where they talked about, Mr. Sands came back from a meeting and said, hey, there's concern around the cell phone tower funds, and they're not going to be giving us the money. So we had a meeting and I said that, and they said, well, the town manager said, well, I didn't say we're not going to give it to you, but we're concerned. We don't know why we should have to give it to you, right? And I'm paraphrasing here. I don't want to put words in, but it was to that extent. So my assumption was moving forward, this is going to be an agenda. We'll talk about it moving forward. But just this week, or maybe late last week, I had asked Mr. Sands about it. He says, but we haven't received it for FY21 or FY22. So that's a problem. I want to bring it to you. He's sent emails to Ms. Mills. We haven't gotten a response, but I just want to make you aware because there's communication that comes, I work for you. I respect you as a body, right? As individuals, but I work for you. You have oversight. My understanding of Title 16 is school committee has oversight of the budget. And so I'm making you aware of this information because I don't want to blindside you, but I also want you to know that there's other information coming from my understanding, the council members that is, this is what's going on from our perspective. Something we didn't talk about, but I want to be, is this due from reconciliation between Coventry Public Schools and the town FY 2020. So obviously there's been a lot of transition. There's been transition with personnel, but there's also been transition from accounts. So reconciliation used to take place on a monthly basis. And then what happened was we ended up establishing our own account. There was Mr. Arnett and Ms. Mangiarelli. Well, Mr. Arnett left and Ms. Mangiarelli left. Then we ended up with our own account. You have an email that I shared with you from Steve Gross, the auditor, because my understanding talking to Mr. Gross is it's very clear there was an amount that was due to the schools from the town. And both sides knew about that. Now we haven't received, and again, Mr. Stans, is telling me we haven't received, we had budgeted $1,300,000 we used in FY 21, and this year we budgeted of our fund balance. This year we had budgeted $700,000. Each year there was $200,000 for the food service or the school lunch, and the rest for operations. We've sent emails. I sent this. This was sent to the town, and it's kind of like crickets, in terms of there's funds there that were never transferred over to us, and so you're hearing about cash flow. Well, Ms. Mangiarelli had said. Last year, I remember we had a conversation concerned that in October we'd run into cash flow because now we have our own account. Before, when funds were in one account, the money we'd pay the bills, the money would come in. Now we're on our own, right? We did ESSER funds, right? We purchased Chromebooks. We've put personnel in place, but we have to get reimbursed on that. So the fact of the matter is that we're inquiring about our fund balance and having some of that access to that fund balance, because now pretty soon the ESSER funds will start coming in. Our grant, which is our federal grants, the CRP, the Consolidated Resource Plan, we get reimbursed on those funds. And so it makes sense. And even when we met, we met with the town manager and the finance director, and it made sense. We had a breakfast meeting, understanding that we're putting out these funds, but we're waiting for reimbursement. And yet I hear things coming back. I see emails coming from council members. And my concern is they're trying to give us, this is just my opinion, but I want to make it public that we're mismanaging. There was a comment that was made from somebody that we should be going to the school committee because we're deficit spending. We're not. I see what we're spending. We come before you for every dollar we spend with ESSER funds, right? Approval. We had lengthy conversations around this. There were times where we asked for something and we were said, no, we need more information, right? So, I think we're extremely transparent about this, but there are cash flow. And so these funds that are due to us. So I'm bringing it to you because we are working on it. So Mr. Sand sends emails. I wait. We see if we don't get a response. If not, we have a meeting. I've asked for a meeting coming up with myself, Mr. Sands, Mr. DeVerna, who's an incredible addition to our team, who is a certified public accountant. And we've asked for a meeting with the town manager and the finance director on Monday, just to make sure we're on the same page with all of our financials. So I just want you to know, and I'm bringing this to your attention in this format because I'm concerned about the way information gets to certain individuals and how it comes back to the committee. That, as far as I am, I haven't changed my style, I don't think, since I've been here, right? It gets me in trouble sometimes, but I'm consistent. And I just want you to know that, and I've had some conversations, and I appreciate the conversations I've had with committee members that, I recognize my responsibility, Mr. Sands' responsibility. Our job is to work together with the town. And I believe, we've kept open dialogue. We need to do better in terms of making sure our financial departments are working and meeting on a regular basis. It's very easy to send emails back and forth. So we're going to, try to, I'm definitely going to make sure that we improve that. But I want you to know, this is something that we've addressed. We're going to continue to address. The email that you have says about $5 million. We don't believe it's $5 million, right? We have other, we believe it's closer to like $2.4, $2.5 million. But I just wanted you to know that this is, we have resources, we have funds that are due to the school. Another thing we talked about, I'm just going to throw in here, is impact fees. Mr. Sands wasn't aware of impact fees. We've talked about that. That goes towards our capital. He's reached out to the town finance director, just inquiring, because usually Ms. Mangiarelli, or before that, there are other finance directors, the finance director from the town would say, this is how much you have for impact fees. And we would have to go and say, we want to spend it towards this project. I think we used it towards the well at one point, right? We come before you and we do it. So those are other resources we can use. And you would think the town, and I'm not saying they don't want to give it to us. Maybe they're not aware of it. I'll play devil's advocate on that end. But, I just want to know, we are doing due diligence on our part, trying to work together. And we have to. We're coming into the budget process. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because if you've watched any of the school building committees or been participating, you see that there's some resistance there. Outside of us, take me out of the equation, take Mr. Sands out. There's been some resistance. And so I just want to bring that up, that we are, again, I'm not trying to hold this from you. We've been doing due diligence, I think, on our part, and hopefully we'll have more conversations with the town administration. But because I see these other emails coming and the concerns, the way it's presented, I take it as if they're concerned. Two things. One is, I'm responsible to you. You have oversight. And I'm concerned that some people don't understand that. I truly am. And that's not a shot. I believe some of the council members don't understand that you are responsible for the budget. And I'm not trying to be flip. I truly believe that. And from things that I've heard, it reinforces that. But the other thing is that, we've struggled with some things. We've struggled with the new software system. I know Mr. Sands doesn't want to hear it. I've been supportive of it, but I think we need something different. I honestly do. And maybe you guys, and maybe Chris, you guys will feel differently. But I see the struggles we've had pulling data and trying to come up with reports. And so hopefully if we can work that out, great. But if not, that's something we need to address. But, we're willing to share whatever we have. We're not withholding anything. So I just want to bring that to your attention. Again, I'm not looking for right now. I'm not looking for anything other than I want you to understand where we're at, why we're where we're at. So that summarized the financial piece. And,
Sure. Are you finished with that particular? Do you want to just finish a complete report?
Can I just do the quick?
Yeah, let him do it.
And then you can ask.
Then we'll run down.
WCVY is an interesting, there's a lot more. I'll come before you. I'll bring some people with me. I think we'll talk about, I just want to let you know, we had some type of shared agreement with the Rhode Island Publics. They had informed us that effective last April, they were going to not need our station. They had their own and they weren't going to share. So Mr. I'm just lost my no, not ESPN. Mr. Pearson had attended. You've talked to me a couple of times. Because Mr. Pearson has a background in it. I've asked for his advice because, long story short, so COVID came, we weren't running for a few months. And then we need to renew the license. So I've worked with an individual in Virginia who specializes in FCC. We filed for the license. We're asking for it. We're up and running. We're asking for 24 hours a day, so we don't have to worry about a share agreement. Chris DePaula, who runs a local radio station, has met with Mr. Murphy and myself, helped us put a computer system that it ran 6 songs. It does the legal ID. Now we added a few holiday songs to it. Our plan is that in January, I know Ms. Maycomber's not here, but they posted, I think we have an advisor. I believe it's your brother. Jay Murray's going to be the advisor. He did it before. We have many students that are involved. We have alumni. There was a gentleman, Mr. Grady, that they just honored at a recent ceremony, the Coventry High School Hall of Fame. There's a gentleman in Connecticut that's a grad that owns a radio station. There's a gentleman that's a graduate that I met with recently that runs a local access television in Norfolk, Mass, and he's willing to help and pull alumni together. So the good part is we're up and running. At another time, I'll come back with all the minutiae and the details of how we got here. I think it's interesting, but it's a long legacy, and we are up and running, and hopefully in January we have students running it again, and we can do some more programming, but it's going to be solely Coventry Public Schools, no more shared agreement. So.
Great. Thank you for that report. I'm just going to go down the line. Mr. Florio, any questions for Mr. Levis on this report?
Hi, Mr. Levis. It appears that, I don't know if it's the council or if it's the administration of the town, but it seems like they're micromanaging the school department and trying to micromanage the school committee, which I really don't like, because we're all elected officials. And you heard my say in executive session. I don't like being micromanaged, and makes me angry. If the money's yours, it should go to here. It should come here. And we are the ones who decide with you how the money is spent. At least was my impression of being on school committee. And it goes to your dilemma as well, Mr. Murray, being the school committee, the school building committee chair on the school committee. It just seems like they're not playing nice in the sandbox. And when that happens, aren't we afforded some kind of legal options when it comes to that? By law, they're not supposed to be doing what they are doing. Am I correct?
I'm not sure I guess that's why I led off by saying that we're dealing with it, but I brought it public because it's other information's being brought to the committee, and I want you to know that, what we're dealing with and what we're doing. So I'm not concerned about legal right now. I think the law is very clear that the money, our budget's under the care, custody, and control of the school committee, the school department is. So I'm just letting you know that we're having dialogue. There seems to be some confusion, and we're not even asking for all this money up front. Just, we're just saying, give us some access to it. And that was part of the agreement that Ms. Mingerelli and Mr. Arnett had said before, that, we're just looking to have some access to our funds. We put it in our budget. It was approved by the taxpayers, the use of these. So when you hear these other things about, cash flow, yes. But there's not a correlation between cash flow and we can't manage our budget. I think that's my take from this. And I'm only reading between the lines, seeing emails, hearing conversations. And the other part is, like you said, Mr. Florio, I believe certain individuals don't understand that you have oversight of our budget. They may approve the budget that goes to the voters, but once that's done, it's up to this body. So yes, I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
I'm trying to keep it as brief as possible. I know it's getting late. First off, thank you on WCVY, near and dear to my heart. I grew up with it. It's got a great legacy, and I haven't even talked to my brother about it. We don't talk enough, but apparently but I know he ran the club before. He was really excited about it. Those who know my brother, he can be intense. I can be intense. We grew up in the same household, I guess. But he's also very passionate, very dedicated to the students, and I know he'll probably do a bang-up job. With regard to the funds, the real thing, I don't want to get into the whole council, school committee discussion. I look at it this way. I'm going to expect it's going to be taken care of as an administrative priority. We have a cash flow issue. I can say that I have received multiple calls that have touched base on this issue, especially in relationship to the building issue. We've discussed that. It concerns me that when things need to be done administratively, while they can be certainly reported out to the individuals, it's how it's reported out, right? It can be reported out as we have a discrepancy or we have a differing opinion, but we're working it out. Or you can report it out in such light that, they're asking for money they're not owed and we don't agree with it, and going into detail, which sounds like it's more of what's happened. And so that has a ripple effect, because then it creates a negative dialogue that comes our way. And I have to fend off and say, no, it's a cash flow issue. And from what I'm getting is that we're owed that money, right? So what it comes down to is who has the documentation. My understanding is that there was information coming from the auditor that would support our position, right? That would go over.
You received that.
Right.
Received it.
Which I've seen.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of making that point. It's in the, so there is supporting documentation, and that was going to be presented to the town. Has that been presented? Is that Monday?
They're on the email. So that came because the auditor works for the town. That came, but the auditor's statement was this should be a non-issue because the town and the schools know this exists, right? So,
apparently not, because it's not rectified, right? I'm saying, has it been presented in person? Like, have you had the discussion post email? So you're saying you're going to meet on Monday?
Well, yeah, I've asked for a meeting to make sure we're on the same. I framed it so that we can get together to get on the same page. Like, there's a lot to discuss, but all right. Your point about the negativity, like sometimes, and I think I had a conversation with someone else. It's that it doesn't benefit me to have these negative conversations. Right?
No, I'm not saying you are negative. I'm saying it creates negativity from the other side when it's reported out to council that we're asking for money we're not owed, right? And then it comes to my level as a school committee member, and then I've got to respond and I've got to ask, like, what's going on here? Are we like in the red? That's not how we should run, right? We have roles to play. So I'm not casting shadow on you at all. Well, I guess what I'm saying is we have our role to play in the political end of, if this can't get resolved at the administrative level, I'd encourage our school committee to get involved, to talk to council and plead our case. Once the documentation is done and verified, and they say, well, we see it, but we still don't agree. At some point, we need to get involved. And I just encourage you to use the school committee in that capacity. In addition to the cell tower, which how long have been paid the cell tower funds? Some time now. It's been years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's established precedent here. Why all of a sudden, like I had said this earlier, the only thing that changed was the administration. Administrations change, but you typically take over past practice unless there's something that in documentation that says there's something to the contrary. So, again, I want to be helpful in saying I would encourage this committee and call for a meeting immediately if this continues to be an issue, because it is getting blended in the dialogue, including the building project, which I heard at that meeting. There was some inference that the school committee and the school district wasn't managing their finances And that's destructive. That's corrosive, right? On both sides. So that's not the way the dialogue should go and how it should be dropped. And then last thing, with regards to COVID-19, I'm dealing a lot with this in my own personal work. COVID is ticking up, and I guess, is the vaccination clinic only for second?
Yeah, I mean, what happened was people that night signed up for the second.
Okay.
So I think I had said in my update, if I had received word that there was going to be additional slots, we'd send it over, but there hasn't been. We're in dialogue about running more clinics. We're in dialogue around running more. They've reduced the age now for the booster to 16. So, it's just, how does the Department of Health want to continue? They're targeting, it looks like, in my opinion, they're targeting inner city areas, more urban areas than the Coventry, because we don't have anything else scheduled after this, even though I've talked to the EMA and they're looking at it. But I think Rido's saying a lot of people have access to their primary care, but we're still continuing that dialogue. I'll continue that tomorrow night. But right now it's just the second shot vaccination.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's tough. It's probably going to get tougher. If you look at last year's data, it spiked in mid-January and then it kind of progressively got down. But want to thank all the principals and all the administration who are dealing with this. I know it's a arduous task, to say the least, and I know it's burning people out, but it is appreciated. And until things change, just keep staying the course and trying to keep kids in the classroom. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson.
Where to begin? COVID. No, I don't want to talk about COVID. Good to hear about the radio station. I wish I was more help. I know you asked me questions and I reached out to some industry friends that I have and didn't really get the kind of response that I hoped for, but kind of got the response I expected. So it's really good to hear back up and running. And I've tuned in several times on driving around and they're always playing that. Yeah, they're always playing that funk song from the 70s. Yeah. And I'm like, just crank it up. It's awesome. So, to the not so happy topic of the financial stuff, I appreciate what you're doing in trying to solve this administratively, because as has been commented on several times, that is the appropriate process, for the professionals to hammer this out. And if it gets to the point where we run into a disagreement or something that has to be worked out at a higher level, which really never happened much, then you can bring us on board. I'm just concerned that some of the council members, especially the ones who are a little greener, may not understand their role or understand the process, or they're trying to politicize. I don't know. But some of the emails I've received were a little tense is a good word for it. And I'm certain I'm off someone's Christmas card list at this point based on my response. So let's definitely work it out so we can just avoid any kind of public spectacle. And then we can, as Mr. Murray said, report on this properly of what's really happening and what our mitigation steps are. So I appreciate that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And I too have complete faith that this can be worked out between the administration, between the town and the schools. And I'm hopeful that a reconciliation can be made. So that's enough for me as well. Anything from the public on Mr. Levis's report? Any questions? Seeing nothing, we can move on to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens here that would like to comment on anything? I know we're tired. Seeing nobody coming forward, could I entertain a motion to schedule the next meeting?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to schedule next meeting for January 13, 2022 at Coventry Town Hall at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. And moving on to adjournment, is there a motion? I have
here we go.
9:42.
Mr. Levis, you made it before 10 o'clock. Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:42 PM.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Hardly. Motion carries 5-0. Thank
Mr.
you all
Levis,
for attending.
It was a very